In the village of Ijekori, there lived a beautiful young lady named Adanna. Her beauty was known far and wide, and many men sought her hand in marriage. But one fateful day, raiders came to the village. They captured many people, and Adanna was among them. She was taken far from her home and sold into slavery. Adanna was sold to the palace of the great king Oduma, where she worked as a servant. The palace was grand, but her heart was heavy, for she longed for her freedom. One day, Queen Morenike, the king's wife, noticed Adanna's beauty and became jealous. Despite her hatred, the queen saw an opportunity. Her kindness toward everyone, even the most lowly of palace workers, reached the king's ears. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was her spirit that truly captivated him. One evening, during a grand festival in the palace, King Oduma noticed Adanna serving food to the guests. Her movements were graceful, and her eyes sparkled in the firelight. He could not take his eyes off her. That night, after the celebration ended, he summoned her to his chambers. Adanna, unaware of the king's growing interest, was shocked but dared not disobey. When she arrived, King Oduma spoke to her kindly, asking about her life, her past, and how she had come to the palace. His words were soft, but the power of his presence was overwhelming. As the night went on, he drew closer to her, and soon, the king and Adanna became entangled in a relationship that neither of them could have predicted. Over the next few weeks, Adanna found herself drawn into the king's private world. Though she was still a servant by status, King Oduma treated her with a level of care and attention that set her apart from the other women in the palace. Their relationship remained a secret, but whispers began to spread through the palace halls as servants noticed how frequently the king summoned Adanna. Months later, Adanna discovered that she was pregnant. Fear gripped her heart. She knew that Queen Morenike, who already resented her, would be furious. Yet, a part of her was filled with hope. A child, especially a son, would bring her favor in the palace, for in Ijekori, sons were seen as blessings. They were future warriors, rulers, and protectors of the kingdom. When the time came, Adanna gave birth to a son, a strong and healthy boy. His cries filled the palace halls, and the news quickly reached the ears of King Oduma. The king, overjoyed, immediately declared the child his son and heir. He lavished gifts upon Adanna and her newborn, giving them a special place in the palace. The boy, named Aderemi, meaning, "the crown has comforted me," was destined to be the king's pride. But while the king celebrated, Queen Morenike was filled with rage and bitterness. She had given birth to only one child, a daughter named Aderemi. Though Aderemi was loved, she could never inherit the throne. In the kingdom of Ijekori, it was the sons who carried the family's legacy in her heart. Queen Morenike seethed with jealousy and resentment. She had borne the king's child first, but it was a daughter, one who would never bring her the honor she sought. She watched as King Oduma's attention shifted more and more to Adanna and her son. The lavish gifts, the frequent visits to Adanna's quarters, the doting on Aderemi, all of it ate away at her pride. How can this be? The queen muttered to herself, pacing in her royal chambers. I am the queen, and yet it is a servant who bears the son the king desires. This will not stand. The queen's jealousy soon turned into hatred. She could not bear the sight of Adanna's rise in the palace. To make matters worse, the people of Ijekori began to whisper about the boy, speaking of him as the rightful heir, and forgetting Queen Morenike's daughter, Aderemi. In their eyes, Aderemi, the son, was the future of the kingdom. Queen Morenike's anger grew with each passing day. She watched as the king spent more time with his son and less time with her. The love and attention that once filled her life had shifted, leaving her feeling abandoned and betrayed. She began plotting her revenge. One evening, as she sat alone in her chambers, the queen called for her most trusted handmaiden. Together, they devised a plan. Queen Morenike knew that simply harming Adanna would not be enough. She needed to ensure that Adanna and her son would never rise above her own child. The queen's mind turned dark, and she began to scheme. Late one night, while the palace slept, Queen Morenike slipped into the shadows of the palace. She made her way to Adanna's quarters, where Aderemi slept peacefully in his cradle. Adanna, exhausted from the day, lay fast asleep. The queen stood over them, her heart pounding with rage and jealousy. But just as Queen Morenike reached for the boy, something stopped her. A strange sense of foreboding crept over her, as if unseen eyes were watching. She quickly withdrew, her mind racing with darker thoughts. "This is not the time," she whispered to herself. "I must be patient." In the following weeks, Queen Morenike began to poison the minds of those around her. She spread rumors about Adanna, accusing her of using dark magic to seduce the king. She whispered to the king's advisors, filling their ears with doubts about the boy's legitimacy. One evening, the queen summoned a powerful herbalist from a distant village. This woman, known for her dark arts, was feared by many. Queen Morenike offered her riches beyond imagination in exchange for a poison that would rid her of both Adanna and her son once and for all. The herbalist agreed, providing the queen with a deadly concoction that would work slowly but surely. With the poison in hand, Queen Morenike's heart raced with both excitement and fear. She knew that if the king discovered her plan, her own life would be at risk. But her hatred was stronger than her fear. One night, she approached Adanna's quarters, holding a bowl of food laced with the poison. She smiled sweetly as she offered it to Adanna, pretending to care for her well-being. Adanna, unaware of the danger, graciously accepted the meal. As Adanna's curse settled in the air, the wind outside howled, as if the spirits of the ancestors had taken her words and carried them to the heavens. The palace, with its golden walls and luxurious tapestries, suddenly felt cold and heavy, but no one could understand why. Queen Morenike watched as Adanna took her last breath. A wicked smile spread across her face. "Good riddance," she whispered. "Now no one will ever know of the king's son by a slave." She ordered the palace guards to bury Adanna in an unmarked grave outside the palace walls, ensuring that her memory would be erased forever. But as the days turned into weeks, something strange began to happen in the palace. Queen Morenike, who had always held herself with pride, felt an unease that she couldn't explain. It was as if a dark cloud hung over her. She would hear whispers in the night, faint voices echoing in the hallways, and strange dreams haunted her sleep. In those dreams, she would see Adanna standing before her, holding a child, a boy, laughing as Queen Morenike's hands reached out but could never touch him. Despite these haunting visions, Queen Morenike believed that the curse would die with Adanna. She carried on, but in the back of her mind, the fear of Adanna's words lingered. Years passed, and the kingdom seemed to forget Adanna. The king was pleased with his daughter, Princess Aderemi, and soon, Queen Morenike became pregnant again. This time, she was confident that she would bear the king a son who would inherit the throne and bring her the honor she so desperately craved. When the time came, the palace was filled with excitement. The queen gave birth, and to her delight, it was a boy, a strong, healthy boy. But her joy was short-lived. Just days after his birth, the boy fell mysteriously ill. The palace healers were called, and they tried every remedy they knew, but the child's condition worsened with each passing hour. No one could understand what had gone wrong. One stormy night, as the queen held her dying son in her arms, she remembered Adanna's curse. The words echoed in her mind like a haunting melody: "No woman in this palace shall ever give birth to a boy who will live, except from my lineage." A deep fear gripped her heart, and she realized the terrible truth. The curse was real, and it was unfolding before her very eyes. When the boy passed away, the palace was thrown into mourning. The king was devastated, but Queen Morenike was consumed with guilt and dread. She could not shake the feeling that Adanna's spirit was watching her, punishing her for the cruelty she had inflicted. As time went on, Queen Morenike became more desperate. She tried again and again to conceive another son, but each time, tragedy struck. Some boys were born still, others died within days, and each loss only deepened the queen's torment. She began to isolate herself from the world, her once beautiful face growing pale and gaunt. The whispers about the curse spread quietly throughout the kingdom. Servants would talk in hushed tones, and the people of Ijekori began to wonder if their royal family had been cursed. Some said it was because of an evil done in the past, while others claimed it was a punishment for forgetting those who had been wronged. In the meantime, Princess Adanna grew older, blossoming into a wise and kind young woman. The king, having lost hope for a male heir, began to see his daughter as the future of the kingdom. Though it was not traditional for a woman to rule, Adanna had the strength and wisdom of a leader. The people loved her, and the king slowly began preparing her to take over the throne. But Queen Morenike was not satisfied. In her desperation, she turned to the palace witch, an old woman who lived in the shadows of the kingdom. The queen begged the witch to help her break the curse, promising riches, power, anything she desired. The witch listened carefully, her wrinkled face unreadable. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "The curse is deep," she said, "and it cannot be easily undone. It was born from the heart of a woman wronged, and only her lineage can bring it to an end." Queen Morenike's eyes widened. "What do you mean? How can her lineage possibly end the curse?" The witch looked at the queen with piercing eyes. "Adanna's bloodline is the key. As long as her blood flows, her descendants will have the power to bear sons who live. But you, queen, will never escape this curse, for it was your own actions that brought it upon your house." Queen Morenike's heart pounded in her chest. If the boy was still alive, then Adanna's curse still had power over the palace. The queen knew that if she wanted to secure her future and the future of her lineage, she would have to find the boy and eliminate him. With dark intentions brewing in her heart, Queen Morenike made plans to hunt down Adanna's son, unaware that the boy, now grown, was not only alive but already beginning to fulfill the prophecy that his mother had set into motion. The curse, bound by blood, was far from over, and the fate of the kingdom would soon hang in the balance. As Adanna's son will be the next king of the kingdom.